So, okay. So let's talk turkey here. I'm not gonna want to cut to the chase and kind of give you an update on everything and what I've put together briefly for you to see what's going to happen with Kew Gardens as well. So, um, obviously, you all know that it passed. City of Yes passed, and it was made into law on December 18th. December 18th. That's when Adams signed it. So we have 4 months to file what's called an Article 78 proceeding, which is a lawsuit against the city for what we describe as arbitrary and capricious decision making. And this is based upon the fact, well, a number of things, but one of the key things being that the environmental impact statement, I've been doing this professionally for 30 years, and this is the most efficient environmental impact statement I've ever seen. I would go so far as to call it fraudulent. It is really, really bad. And I can go into some detail about it, but I'll just give you an example that the city is basing all of the decisions that have been made to change our baseline zoning, right? Because that's exactly what happened. They changed the zoning for every single property in the city of New York, and they did it all in one fell swoop, okay? So when you have a decision like this and it's pushed through very quickly and you're supposed to come up with a rationale and a reason behind it, the entirety of this process was the city saying, well, we can't possibly study every property in the city of New York. We can't do that. So we're going to do what's called a generic action. And the generic action, we can't determine where development is going to happen. We can't determine how much development is going to happen. And we can't determine what kind of development is going to happen. So we're going to create prototypical models. This is what they called it. These are theoretical models. And they did 28 theoretical models in 18 neighborhoods. And, our lawyer, who, by the way, was officially retained as of 2 nights ago, his comment to me was, Paul, how many neighborhoods are there in the city? I said, over 500. And he said, how many properties are there in the city? Residential lots. There are 313,000. So they took 28 properties, which is 9/1,000ths of 1% sample to determine a zoning text amendment that affects every single property in the city of New York. And then after saying we can't determine what, where, when, or how things are going to be developed, they then said in the other part of the environmental impact statement, by the way, there won't be any impacts. There won't be any impact on water and sewer. There won't be any impact on neighborhood character. There won't be any impact on socioeconomic conditions. So this is, as I said, fraudulent. This isn't just deficient. This is a fraudulent situation. It doesn't surprise me looking at where this is coming from, this mayor, this administration. But we have a 4-month window, and now it's more like a 3-month window to file an Article 78 proceeding. We are also going to be filing some other legal actions in tandem with this, and they're going to be different actions that are focusing on different portions of this. But the Article 78 is the one that's on the clock, and that's why it's important that we act on it as soon as possible. So that's the long and the short of it. And again, I'm going to go into more detail. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, but if one of you want to share, if whoever's running this wants to share their screen with me or give me co-hosting, whatever, I can show you some very brief stuff on how this is going to be affecting the gardens. So I don't know who has.
It's me, but I'm doing it on my iPad, and I usually do it on my computer. So you're just going to have to give me 1 second.
Sure, go ahead. Do what you need to do.
Paul, while we're waiting,
Yep.
We did a Article 78 challenge for the jail that didn't really work too well.
Correct.
Do we have a better chance on this one?
Much better chance on this one. Yes. I mean, we're kind of in uncharted territory because no, we're looking to overturn an entire regime, right? That you were looking to find defects in the process for the jail. We are looking to say this process, which hasn't happened in 60 plus years, has been done in such a way that, again, how do you on the one hand say we don't know what's going to happen, oh, and by the way, nothing's going to happen?
How could they
This
be
is,
so stupid to choose 28 properties and
well, they
that,
cherry they
but
cherry
think that that wouldn't be challenged?
because they weren't challenged on the economic part, which should have been challenged. They didn't even file an environmental impact statement for the economic part.
Okay, Paul, I just made you co-host,
Oh,
so
perfect.
that should allow you to be able
Yep.
to use the
Okay.
screen.
Excellent. Hold on. Let's see if I can do it. Let's try this. Tell me if you see all kinds of
Yep,
stuff here.
yep, we got it.
Okay, my very busy laptop here. Okay, here we go. Let's open that up. Okay, so let me close that. There we go. And okay, so let's talk about, again, I'm going to go through some very basic stuff here. The changes that were made were pretty dramatic, right? Again, the rhetoric and propaganda versus the reality are two very different things. So your one family zoning in Kew Gardens, you have, most of it up here in the north, near between Austin from Metropolitan up to Kew Gardens Road. On both sides of the railroad tracks, you have some more down near Richmond Hill. You have the R12. You have a few blocks of that just south of Metropolitan on the park blocks. So, and then you have your two family zoning. You have R4A, which is detached 1 and 2 family. You have R4-1, which is semi-attached 1 and 2 family. And you have your lower density multifamily, R32 and R5 zones. We're not going to focus too much on that. I brought this up at the last time I presented. You have deed restrictions that are enforceable, and they're much more important now than they were when we had this discussion, 9 or 10 months ago. Because now, with the city of Yes, we now have a situation where all 1 and 2 family properties are now allowed to have an additional unit, an accessory dwelling unit, whether it's in the basement, the attic, a garage conversion, a backyard house, or an extension to your home off the rear. You're allowed to do this, and the only thing that can stop that is your deed restriction, which covers the areas that are shown in green, which are important, right? So I'm going to go into some of the details about that, but I do want to mention, the transit-oriented development, right? This was one of the big issues that everybody had was, oh my gosh, they're going to be able to build apartment buildings in our one family zoning. And what they did was they did remove, this just gives you an idea of what they were saying they wanted to be built in these lower density areas. If you look at this map, all the things in red were 5,000 square feet or more. These would all be allowed as of right to be apartment buildings, anywhere from 3 to 5 stories tall, depending on the zoning and number of units, et cetera, all without any parking requirements, right? The yellow are properties that are smaller than 50 by 100 or 5,000 square feet. But if someone bought up multiple properties, they could get to that 5,000 square feet and build an apartment building. And of course, if they had more than 5,000 square feet, they could build an even bigger apartment building. So basically, what's happened is all of the one family areas have been removed from that. So that's the one family areas. Those have now been removed. So two family areas are still able to have apartment buildings on all properties 5,000 square feet or larger. And there are, more than a dozen that are already that large. And the yellow properties are all the other properties where if they were purchased, they would have enough property to build multifamily, tear those down and build apartment buildings. So this would.
Can I ask a question? You have one yellow thing that's already an apartment building
Where?
right next to the Long Island. Oh no, that's not. That's the
No.
Austin Alps.
No,
Okay.
I actually left out the apartment buildings that are already up. These are all row houses and detached homes. As you can see, they have these long, narrow lots.
Okay.
These are bigger lots. These have
So
1 and 2 family homes on them. These are in the R4A zones, the
can
red.
we just go up a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Next to the Lefferts Boulevard Bridge, you have the post
Those are
office.
storefronts, correct.
You have the post office. Why wouldn't that be considered something that you could build a multifamily on? It's
Well, we're going to talk about that.
okay.
But it's not in the transit zone. It's in the town center zoning, which is the commercial overlay, right?
But it's
So
R41 also. Oh, okay.
let's separate the transit oriented development from the town
Okay.
center zoning. There is some overlap, but let's just say that the transit areas have a different thing going on than the TODs. So the point
Got
is
it.
that these that I call out here, those are both transit zone and commercially have commercial overlays. These in particular. The post office site is not in the transit zone, but it does have the commercial overlay. So we will talk about that. So yes, so everything you see here in the R4A and R4-1 zones, these can now be 4-story apartment buildings at a 1.5 FAR. They have increased the baseline FAR in these areas to a 1.0, just as they've increased the baseline FAR to a 0.75 in the R1s, 2s, and 3s if it's 4,000 square feet or less, and a 0.6 if it's more than 4,000 square feet. Most of your lots in your R2 zone are actually much more than 4,000 square feet. And we're going to talk about that too, because that's creating a problem for you. So in fact, you have 416 properties in your R2 and R1-2 zones. And most of them are single family detached homes. These are the properties that prior to the city of Yes could have been subdivided. What does that mean? In the R2 zones, they were on 80-foot wide lots and were at least 7,600 square feet. So a house could be torn down and demolished and replaced with 2 detached homes. That's in the R2s. In the R1-2s, it was 60 feet wide, 5,700 square feet. If you had 120 feet, you could divide it up into 2 properties and do the same. Obviously, it's only a few properties in the R1-2, but in the R2 zone, it was actually quite a few. I'd say, this is about 30 properties altogether, plus a few down in the southern part near Richmond Hill. Now, with the change in basic lot size, right? So lot sizes for R2 have gone from 40 feet wide to 30 feet wide, and from 3,800 square feet to 2,850 square feet, almost 1,000 square feet less. In the R1-2, it's gone from 60 feet to 50 feet and 5,700 to 4,750, right? So they did this, and I want you to take a look at now how many properties are subdividable. So while you are not in a situation where those are going to have apartment buildings, each of those one-family homes can now have 2 2-unit houses on them, because all you need is a 30 by 100, a 30-foot wide property, 2,850 square feet. So as we can see, these are all of these properties are at least 60 feet wide. These are all 60 feet wide or wider, and they're all able to be subdivided. Now, I'm not sure about your deed restrictions, whether there is within the scheme of the plan that state how many quote unquote lots a house has to stand on, because in Broadway Flushing and Douglas Manor and other areas, it actually calls out the number of quote unquote lots that you need. And these were lots that were before zoning existed, that they designated these lots. They were all 20 feet wide. And on some streets, they needed 2 lots. And on some streets, they needed 3 lots. And other streets, they needed 4 or 5. I don't know if you have that in the Kew Gardens deed restrictions. I do know that you have single family only, but I don't know if you have the ability to stop a subdivision of a property. So if you don't have that ability, the best case scenario that you have is that a property will be subdivided and it will be replaced with 2 one-family homes on very narrow lots. But if you don't go to court, then it would be 2 one-family homes, each with an accessory dwelling unit, okay, an ADU. And let me kind of show you what that looks like. This is actually Neponset and Bell Harbor, where I did a large presentation on this, but this will just give you an idea. In Neponset, they have a similar situation where this is the R12. Neponset is R12, Bell Harbor is R2. Prior to City of Yes, there were 19 out of 600 that could be subdivided properties. And in Bell Harbor, it's 66 out of 1,310. So it was less than 5%. And that gives you an idea here. Looking, these are the actual 3 properties that could have been subdivided because they were 80 by 100 or larger, right? So again, this is directly relatable to your situation. Now, it's 527 properties out of 1,310 in Bell Harbor, 45 out of 600 in Neponset, less, but still a lot. And now that same view shows you that almost every house can be subdivided into 2 lots. And each property is 30 by 100. And you can see in the distance here, those are actually properties that were 30 by 100 already, but those are at a much lower FAR. And each of those 30 by 100s can be a 0.75. So you end up with something like this, where you have very narrow, tall houses with an accessory dwelling unit on the top floor, in this case, because the attics had to have them. In your case, you can build them in your backyard. You can build them as an extension of your home. This just gives you a particular situation. This is a 900 square foot house, and this is what could happen. It could be split into 2 properties, each with an owner's unit and an accessory dwelling unit in the attic. And again, in their case, because they're in a flood zone, they couldn't build in the basement or in the backyard or a garage conversion. But in your case, there is no prohibition. Your R12 and R2 zones, you can build them in the backyard. You can build them a garage conversion. You can build them attached to the back of your house. You could build it in the attic, or you could build it in the basement. You could do it at all of those different scenarios. So as you can see, the vast majority of the R2 area north of Metro is affected by this. And any property that's over 8,000, 8,600 square feet can actually be subdivided into 3 properties now, instead of just 2. Because remember, it's 30 by 100. So basically, some of these blue properties that are 100 by 100 or 100 by 120, these can all be subdivided into multiple properties based upon the size of the properties.
What's the process for subdividing a property?
You buy the property, you file with the city a subdivision plan. It divides the property, and then you file to tear down the existing house and you build 2 new houses. And again, or 3 or 4, depending on the size of the property. And again, it not only can you do that, but if you don't fight it, they'll be able to put an accessory dwelling unit. So it will be 2 units on each property. The corner properties can now have 80% lot coverage. 80% lot coverage. So if you've got a 100 by 100 property, 8,000 square feet of it can be covered. And 30% of properties can have what are called permitted obstructions, which are chimneys, stairwells, porches, but also accessory dwelling units. So accessory dwelling units can cover up to a third of your backyard and can be up to 800 square feet if they are a detached or an attached part of your home. So again, let's think about a 60, this is a 60 by 100, right? These are all 60 by 100s. Let's say they're divided, and this gives you an idea here, right? This is a 60 by 100 divided into 230 by 100s. So these lots are now 3,000 square feet. The FAR is a 0.75. So that means you can build 2,250 square feet of living space. That doesn't include recreation rooms, other exemptions, garage exemptions, and anything in an attic under 8 feet. Okay, so you can build, instead of a 2,250 square foot proper home, you're building well over a 3,000 square foot house on a 3,000 square foot lot. So long story short, you can cover the property greatly. Your side yards are now 5 and 5 and 15 in the front, unless your property next to you is 10 feet, and then you can bump your front yard out to 10 feet, your house out to 10 feet. They've done a reverse lineup to 5 feet, 5 feet minimum front yards. Rear yards are now 20 feet. And even within your rear yard, you can have an accessory dwelling unit. Okay, sitting on a third of that rear yard. So basically, like I said, this is not, quote, a little more housing in every neighborhood. This is not a minor change. This is a radical, massive change to the basic zoning of New York City. And the fact that the council passed this, and not only passed it, but basically patted themselves on the back about what a great job they did in, quote unquote, fixing it. They didn't fix anything. As I said, the only thing they really did was remove the apartment buildings within the one family zoning. But they didn't change the FAR. They didn't change the parking requirements. You're still going to have less parking requirements for everything. Accessory dwelling units will not need a parking spot unless the backyard accessory dwelling unit is over 15 feet tall. Then it will need a parking space, which again makes no sense. I've been doing this for almost 30 years professionally, and I can tell you parking requirements are based on unit count. They are not based on the height of a building. So again, this was an arbitrary decision by the city council to tie parking spaces to the height of an accessory dwelling unit. Very strange. Yeah, we've got a lot of problems here, guys. and this is just the start. Let's talk briefly about the town center zoning. Maybe I can go through that a little. Let's pull up the I thought I had a map of the I don't think I do actually, of the but you know what? Let me do this instead. Hang on a second. Let's see if I can do this. Give me 1 second here. Because this is the best way to show it. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So you all can see this, right? Everybody can see this?
Yep.
Screen just went blank, Paul, but that's what we're seeing.
No,
yeah.
no. Now you can see it now?
Yes.
Zola?
Yes,
Yep.
you can see the circle.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, so let's just zoom in here on the Zola so that you can get an idea here, okay? All right, so here we are in your area. Let's, the residence districts, let's pull those off and just put in R1 and R2. Okay, so here's Kew Gardens. Here's your R2 zone, your R12 zone. Now, here is your situation, okay? So you have okay, hold on a second. Hold everything. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong spot. Here we go. Okay, here we go. So this is what I was talking about. So yes, the post office, this is the post office property, is in the R4-1 zone. However, it has a C1-3 overlay. So that means it's eligible for the town center zoning. Now, if this were in an area that was not in a transit zone, you'd be able to build one floor of retail with a maximum of 3 floors of residential above. However, because it is in the transit zone, in fact, it's right on top of the transit zone, it's not at an R4-1 zone level, it's at an R5 level. So you can build a 55-foot tall building with a 2.5 FAR. This is the equivalent of what is today an R6B zone. So you would get a 55-foot tall building with another story of bulkheads and whatever else. So you basically get a 6-story building with 1 floor of retail at the first floor, with 4 floors of units above. And what I can say is this property is 8,400 square feet. So if you take that and the computations for this, let me just do it real quick so that you understand. Okay, so 8,400 times, it's going to be times it's at a R5, so it's a 2.0 for the residential, 16,800 square feet. So this would generate 24 units of housing. Now, in the town center zoning, only new buildings with 75 units or more will have parking required, and only with 50 units or more will it have to have affordable housing, which is why when the council said it was going to be, oh, we've come up this mandatory affordable housing, 50 units or more, I laughed, because 99.9% of these projects are going to be under 50 units. So they're all going to be luxury market rate rental units on top of retail. So you're going to get a nice 6-story building there with 24 units, up to 24 units of housing, anywhere up to 24 units of housing.
Paul, it says the land use is public facilities and institutions, but that's just a description of what it's now. The owner is a private,
Yes,
entity.
Tulip Management LLC, who is a terrible landlord. I've actually seen some lawsuits with Tulip Management. They own property all over the place, including a building in Jamaica, downtown Jamaica. And they've had.
So in other words, what you're telling us is that we can forget the post office. The lease is up in 2026. If this landlord doesn't want to deal with the US Postal Service, they can kick them out and build a 6-story residential building with no affordable housing.
As of right.
As of right.
Yep.
And no parking.
And no parking required. Correct. No parking required. And that's, by the way, that's for all of these C1-3 areas, right? All of them. Now, here it's R6B already, so it's not going to make a difference. But the issue here is you have this commercial overlays on your R1, on your R2 zone, including covering several houses. You have 1, 2, three, four, five, six houses, 7 houses that are in the C13 zone. So in theory, someone could come in, for example, and take this house, which is a single family home on 7,000 square feet. And because it's in the C13, they could build a 5-story apartment building, a 6-story apartment building with, hold on, 7,000, so 7,000, so 14,000 divided by, with 20 units. 20 units plus retail at the first floor. Again, this house should be covered by your deed restrictions. So that's something you would have to go to court to stop. And luckily, you have your deed restrictions that you can count on for these properties. But they're all things you're going to have to litigate over as opposed to what could happen before. Before this, it wouldn't have really been in the interest of a property owner to tear this down and build a 1-story retail store here. But now, and again, you could have fought that with your deed restrictions anyway, but now for someone to be able to build a 20-unit apartment building on that property with no parking, it's a problem. So, that's the kind of stuff that's going to happen. This is the problem. Are there any questions?
What neighborhood would you compare Kew Gardens to if all this were to happen? What existing neighborhood?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, if all this is going to happen, what neighborhood in the city of New York would compare to what could happen in Kew Gardens?
No neighborhoods.
That exists right now.
We are in uncharted territory.
Well, let's say you look in Manhattan.
Well, it's not going to compare to Manhattan. What you're going to end up getting is chaos. You're going to end up getting new construction everywhere. It's going to be different everywhere. It's going to be some people just building super oversized houses, some people splitting up lots, some people building apartment buildings, some people putting in parking, some people not putting in parking, most people not putting in parking because they don't have to, paving over gardens and front yards and backyards and everything else, even more than what you're dealing with today.
Right.
Much more so. And as I said, there's no precedent for this.
So Paul, you're saying we have to litigate if somebody decides they're going to build and there's deed restrictions here. And one of the issues we've dealt with a lot is people posting up what they're supposedly building and knocking down their houses, which they aren't supposed to do ahead of time.
No. They have absolutely the right to tear the house down. They don't have the right to build whatever they're planning to build.
Okay, so
I think you
if they
need to
tear it down and we're in litigation with them, we can say, well, too bad you knocked down your house, but you can't build what you think you want to build.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
The problem is, and again, you've had several other cases in recent years where you guys haven't taken any action, which to me is tragic, to be honest with you, but that's your decision as an organization.
Like
'Cause
which
I know-
ones?
Which ones? The one on off of Metro on 116th Street. That was one that was in the R7A zone, and it was a 1-family home, and they built a 9-story apartment building. You had your deed restrictions there. You've got the
We only found the deed restrictions north of Metro. I didn't realize that there were deed restrictions south.
of course, you have them south of Metro as well. Yes. Yeah, everything. Hold on. Yeah, sorry. You have them.
It was the first slide that you were showing that you
Yeah, hold on.
yellow on both sides. But Dom, I thought you said that you didn't think that it included that.
Here. These are your deed restricted areas here and here. And in fact, one of the things, and Dom and I talked about this a few months ago, on the other side of the street, right off Metro, is a small little area that
And Cuthbert? Grosvenor?
Yeah, it's just a small little
It's
street.
where Ralph Bunch's house is.
Hold on. No, it's not over there. It's over here. This little spot right here. Yeah, Grosvenor Lane.
Yeah,
Yes. Right. This was actually a massive lawsuit 60 years ago where a developer tried to come in and tear down the houses and they were stopped. And that included the corner house, which got torn down. And all you needed to do was go back to that litigation to stop that from happening again. But nobody even knew that I think you guys didn't even know the litigation had happened.
No, we didn't.
Right. So that's what I'm saying is you have these like lack of memory, institutional memory with this stuff. It's a huge lawsuit too. It's really sad. So I mean, listen, you've got houses here on Grinnell and Austin, right? You've got a house here, you've got two houses here. Those are in your R32 zones that the zoning allows them to build apartments, but your deed restrictions don't. So you should be, you should be categorically, and this is again something I talked to Dom about, you should be literally getting every single one of your deed restrictions and making sure you have them so that you can immediately litigate if you need to.
well, I looked at my deed restriction and it doesn't say anything about splitting up the property that I could read.
Well,
It-
no. The way deed restrictions work is it's what's written that's enforceable. If it doesn't say it, it means it's not applicable.
So it doesn't say that I can split up the property.
No. You're missing what I'm saying. If it said, in order to build, on this block, you need at least 2 lots or 3 lots or 4 lots or 5 lots, that would say exactly what the story is. But if there's nothing in there that explicitly states, in other words, deed restrictions are very literal, the way that the courts interpret them. So unless it says something very specific, it means it doesn't apply. So I know, for example, again, in the Rickard Finley covenants in Northeast Queens, they are very explicit. In your deed restrictions, I don't know if they say them or not. I know that the Kew Forest restrictions, which I'm very familiar with, I don't believe that they say that. And they were the same ones, they were written by the Mann family. That was part of the Kew Gardens subdivision. So it is my belief that they do not talk about how many lots you need to build
Count.
a house. Right. So to me, that says that you're probably very vulnerable to having these properties split up.
But
And
my
that's why,
deed restriction, for example, says that no more than one family house on my
correct.
60 by 100 lot.
Well, no, does it say 60 by 100? Or does it say only one family house on this property?
On this property.
Okay, so that,
So this property means 60 by 100 lot on which my house stands, right?
right. So that might be able to be interpreted that way. But I would have to read the deed restriction to see what it says. Because as I said, they're very, very particular in terms of enforcement, and you have to be really careful. I hope that's the case. I hope it says that only one dwelling can be built on this property.
I could get it out of my file right now and read it to you if you want.
That'd be fine. Sure. And where do you live?
Give me a minute.
Where do you live?
81st Avenue
Oh.
and Kew Gardens Road.
81st and on the south side, yes?
Yeah, it's 109.
First Avenue,
It's the next house over.
this one. This
109.
one,
No, the other way.
the other way. Sorry. Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Like I said, you never had to worry about this before because most of your lots are 60s and the zoning was for 40s. And by the way, the standard lot size in New York City for an R2 zone is 40 by 100. I mean, you go to we can go out to Belrose and you see in Belrose, again, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Belrose, but take a look at this.
So mine says, or any building intended for the occupation more than one family or household is prohibited, or any building nearer than 20 feet
Right.
or any barn, stable, or other outhouse near
60
40
feet.
feet of the property line.
40 feet. Okay. Right. But again, how does it demark your property?
It gives you the coordinates.
Right. But then does it say that only, I guess what I'm trying to say is, again, it doesn't say, you know what it is? I have to look at um, the plan that was filed by the Mann family that actually, so let me explain. You have a covenant, and then there's the controlling covenant. And the controlling covenant was filed usually with the full master plan when they laid this out.
Right.
Right.
And it refers to a map that was filed
In 1916 or something like that.
1911.
1911. Okay, there you go. So I would have to look at that map and we'd have to see how many properties have been subdivided from that initial offering.
So we were trying to find that map in the registrar's office. And they said you'd have to go to it was map 611, I think. And they said, oh, it's a big problem. You have to go down into the map room. It's a mess. We have maps from Nassau County there. So it wasn't clear how we get that map.
Yeah, it's funny because I had that map, the original version of it, 25 years ago when I met the granddaughter of the Mann family who helped us when we fought in the Kew Forest neighborhood. We got in touch with her. She lived up in Fairfield, Connecticut or Greenwich or something. And she had the map in her attic.
What'd you do with it?
Well, I gave it back to her.
She's still, oh, she's probably not around.
She is certainly not around. No, she died a long time ago, but um, her name was Lucy, I remember. And we used it in the lawsuit, and I might have a photocopy of it somewhere, but I have to find it. And it's for the entire Kew Gardens subdivision from Richmond Hill all the way up to,
Well, that would be amazing.
yeah, that would be helpful. But again, if there have been properties that have been subdivided at a later date, that doesn't necessarily devalue the deed restriction unless it's been a lot of them.
The description on mine basically says it's like 50 by 100, which is what my lot is.
Right. Right. I understand. Listen, Kew Gardens is interesting because even though you've had a couple of teardowns and rebuilds, I don't think you've had hardly any subdivisions at all.
No.
No, I don't think so.
Right. So that could really work in your favor in terms of, again, litigation. But again, you've got some issues here. I'm telling you, you've got some issues, and your deed restrictions are probably the only thing that you have currently, particularly if the city of Yes is not thrown out, which leads us back to our previous discussion. So I'm going to stop the share for now.
Can I just read to you what this?
Yes, please
Yeah,
do.
I
Mhm.
found it, yeah. There's a lot about, no tanneries and all that stuff.
Yep, we call that the
Yeah.
industrial boilerplate.
Yeah.
No rendering plants.
Yeah, any building intended for the occupation of more than one family or household, or any building intended, oh, wait a minute. Or any building nearer than 20 feet,
Same thing that I have.
Right.
or any barn, stable, or other outhouse,
Yep.
than 40 feet to the line of any street. And then, well, it's a lot of arcane language.
Well, if you have the ability to email me that, I mean,
Yeah, I
Dom,
will photograph it and email.
yes, Dom knows this. I am actually the only designated expert on deed restrictions and covenants by the State Supreme Court of New York. That's one of my little feathers in
I'll
my
take a
cap.
picture of that page.
That would be great. Yeah, send me the
That's why I
whole
emailed it.
deed. If you can send me the whole, not just that page, but all of the pages together.
All the deed. Well, this, the weird thing is, this I got from the title insurance company. So it's not the
Good.
deed, it's the title insurance company came up with this.
Excellent. That means they did their job.
Okay,
Because most title insurance companies, the deed restrictions get washed out of the deed after
okay, so in other words,
generation. So the fact that they found
I'll make copies of the title insurance company report, the whole thing, yes?
sure, that'd be
And
great. Yeah.
how do send it to you?
You can send it to here. Can put it in the chat if you want me to.
It's
My
Paul,
email.
the Paul Graziano 2013.
That's fine. Here, I'm going to send it anyway.
I just sent you mine.
Paul Graziano 2013 at Gmail.
Okay, you have it?
I've got it too, Diddy,
Adam,
don't
you'll
worry about
send
it.
it to
Yeah,
me?
Dom has it. He also has my other email. I have about 5 different
Okay.
emails.
Yep.
So,
I'll get it
That's fine.
copied and send it to you, okay?
Yeah, I'll send it, if you didn't take it down, Denny, I'll send it to you.
yeah,
Okay,
no worries. And Dom, you can always send stuff to Dom too because he sends it to me.
Yeah,
No problem with that
but
either.
you want the entire report, right?
I'd be happy to look at the whole report, but the most important thing is just I want to see the very specific language that they wrote.
It's got
And
quite a few pages, but that's okay, right?
I'm sorry, it's what?
It's got quite a few pages, but that's
Fine.
okay. Yeah, okay.
It's fine.
Paul,
Yeah.
at some point when we were in the registrar's office 2 years ago, I managed to find this document, which I took a photostat of, but can't find it, that went back to 1883. It was handwritten, that had all of the similar language that Dinny has in hers and that I have in mine. But do we need to go back that far, or we just need when man sold it to the first purchaser?
Yes, that's really when you need it, is when man sold it to the first person.
Okay, so that's what we have.
I mean, if you have the 1883 stuff, that's good. That actually goes back to the establishment of Richmond Hill, of which Kew Gardens was part of. So
Okay.
the Richmond Hill deed restrictions encompassed Kew Gardens because remember, Kew Gardens was the golf course
Right.
for Richmond Hill. However, because they still owned the property, they were able to change the deed restrictions. It was only after they sold it that the deed restrictions stuck.
Okay.
So whatever, I mean, it'd be interesting to see the 1883 ones if you can find
Try
it.
if I could find it.
If you can find it, yes.
If we wanted to go back to, have you ever been to the map room in the registrar's office?
I certainly have. It's a mess.
So what's the best way of trying to find this map there?
I mean, let's just put it this way. A lot of stuff that's supposed to be on file has walked out of that building.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes.
Okay.
Um,
All right. So we have to spend a day
digging
Huh.
around. Yeah.
All right, next question. Going back to the post office, it sounds like we don't have a legal leg to stand on to stop that building from being constructed if the owner does not want to renew the lease with the city, with the USPS.
Well, we have a legal leg to stand on it should we win the City of Yes lawsuit, which hopefully the Kew Gardens Civic will be donating to the Queen Civic Congress to help in that effort. That is, as I said, the retainer agreement was signed on Tuesday. I have a check sitting on my table for $35,000. We've raised over $55,000 in the last month.
Okay.
And I'm actually meeting with the lawyer on Sunday. He's coming to my house and we're spending all day starting to put the case together. So I hope you will, as an association and as individuals, we have a GoFundMe, may or may not have seen. The GoFundMe, we've raised $13,500 on the GoFundMe, and then civics and homeowner groups from around the city have been kicking in, $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, whatever they can afford. And it's helped. It's, we have enough to start the action and get moving on it. So,
How much is it gonna cost, do you think?
I mean, we're aiming to raise $250,000. And the reason is that we want to make sure we don't run out of money, right? Because let's say we win the first level. We go to the Supreme Court and we go in with the Article 78 and the judge says, you're right. Then the city comes and brings it to the next level, which is the Court of Appeals.
They go to the appellate
Then-
division first, Paul.
Sorry?
They go to the appellate division.
Appellate
first.
division, I'm sorry, appellate division, and then the Court of Appeals. That's what I
Yeah.
meant. Court of
Yeah.
Appeals is the top level. So you have 3 levels. Now, we're also planning on filing 3 other lawsuits while we're doing this one. So we're taking 4 actions at the same time, more or less. And the goal here is not only to stop this, but also to get what we call a preliminary injunction to stop the permitting before it starts, right? Because this has been live now for a month. And that's why we're trying to get this done as quickly as possible so that we can ask for a preliminary injunction to stop permits from being released until this has been settled. And this could take years to settle. So
this would cover the entire city, this lawsuit, or
yes,
so
this
you'd have
covers
to
the
raise,
entire, yes, this covers
you'd
the
have to
entire.
raise that money from the entire residents of the entire city.
Well, we have a coalition of over 200 organizations that have been working together that I helped to put together. It's not just the Queens Civic Congress. We have the Staten Island Civics United. We have the Joint Community Council of Brooklyn. We have the Bronx Communities Against Overdevelopment. We have the Black Institute. We have Met Council on Housing. We've got this massive coalition, which is fantastic. It's great. And
So
we
you
have
divide the amount by all those organizations, it really doesn't come to that much per organization. is it?
correct. That's why we're saying if everybody can kick in $1,000 or $2,000, we're in pretty good shape. You got it.
Paul, you get to keep GoFundMe takes something, if I remember right.
Yeah,
Are we better off when-
they take a couple of percent. So better to write a check to QCC.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get
Yeah.
to keep it all when you write a check.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've encouraged particularly the civics to donate directly to QCC rather than go through the go. Now, if you want to do it as an individual with a credit card, that's a different story. That's the GoFundMe. If you want to do it as an organization, we recommend writing a check to the Queens Civic Congress for whatever amount you're going to write. And you can even, as I've said, you can mail it to me and I will hand deliver it to Jim Trent, who's the treasurer. Because Warren, who is the president, actually has just had a bunch of medical procedures and he's not checking the PO box. So it's better for you to send it to me, written out to Queens Civic Congress. And then what we say is on the memo line, right? City of Yes Legal Defense Fund. Right, City of Yes Legal Defense Fund. And I can give you my address. That's not a problem. But yes, whatever you're planning to send, that would be great. Individuals can also write checks to Queens Civic Congress, but if you want to do it on the GoFundMe, you can do it on the GoFundMe as well.
Queens
That's
Civic Congress a 501c3 or
is a
501c?
501c4.
Okay, so it's not
Um,
tax deductible.
It is not tax deductible, unfortunately,
All
but it is
A worthy cause.
it's a worthy cause. It's a bona fide group, right?
Yeah.
That's the bigger issue, is that we wanted to make sure that people understood that, you know, it's not going to Joe Schmo. Here, I'm putting the GoFundMe in the box. I just put it in the chat box.
Who's your lawyer?
So our primary lawyer is a guy named Jack Lester. Jack Lester is he's an attorney. I've worked with him before. He's been around for about 30 years doing this stuff. He actually has been the main attorney on congestion pricing. He also was a lawyer. He won a very big case a few weeks ago, which you might have heard about on the news. The last rezoning that de Blasio did before he left office was something called the NoHo Soho rezoning. And not only did they rezone Soho to allow for bigger buildings and whatever, but they also imposed this artists fund fee. And what it was going to make was every artist loft left in Soho and NoHo was going to have to mandatorily have to convert to residential, and each owner was going to have to pay into this artists fund over $1 million per unit. It was incredible. So they went to court, and 3 weeks ago they were at the appellate division. They're going up to the Court of Appeals, and at the appellate division, the judges unanimously called the artists fund unconstitutional and government extortion. Those are the actual terms that they used, which is quite something. So now it's going to the Court of Appeals, but I believe based on that decision that the Court of Appeals is not going to undo that.
Who was to benefit from that fund?
Oh, that was a slush fund controlled by a single individual, the mayor. Yep.
So
I just said, this is what we're dealing with here.
who was the lawyer who won the Kew Forest case?
So
What a
that was,
crime.
sorry. That was a firm called Gallant, Dryer and Berkey. That was back in 1998. I was a young man at that point instead of the almost 54-year-old that you see today. I was 27 at that time, half my life. And I work with a guy named Mark Bresky. I've been doing lawsuits with him on deed restrictions and covenants for the last 20 years. We represent the Bayside Gables, Broadway Flushing, done work in Douglas Manor, Westmoreland, Lefferts Manor in Brooklyn, and a number of other communities, any area that has deed restrictions, and we've never lost a case.
So why didn't you go with him rather than Mr. Lester?
Because Mark is a commercial real estate lawyer and a litigator, but he's not an Article 78 lawyer. An Article 78
Oh,
lawyer.
I see. We're talking about the art. I'm sorry.
This is the Article 78,
Oh,
and in
sorry.
fact, we're going to be filing a civil rights lawsuit because this is going to be affecting communities of color. And Jack Lester, we're going to have assistance from another lawyer named Jimmy Wagner, who is a civil rights attorney in Brooklyn. So he's going to be filing the civil rights case with Jack, because Jack is an Article 78 lawyer and a land use lawyer, but he's not a civil rights lawyer. So we have a lot of moving parts here. I'm sort of the grand poobah, of the whole thing, but
First step is the Article 78. And then would we go on from there to the covenants and restrictions?
well, part of our Article 78 lawsuit, I think we're going to include communities that are deed restricted in that. And we're talking about you guys, the Rickard Finley communities in Northeast Queens, Forest Hills Gardens, who I have a great relationship with, Anthony, who's the president, and several other board members. They are actually, you guys weren't on the Queens Civic Congress meeting. They were on the meeting on Tuesday about the stadium, and they are joining the Queens Civic Congress,
Wow.
which is fantastic. Fantastic.
But that's a private community. How could City of Yes be applied to them?
They have deed restrictions and covenants. It's the same thing. Remember, they're a private community, but they are in the city. A developer buys a house and they file to build an apartment building because the zoning says they can build an apartment building. Then they have to come in and sue that owner. And the fact is, they'll win the case, but it'll be $100,000 later. And every time that happens, they're spending money. It's all about bankrupting your organizations. That's what this is all about. They have much more money than you do collectively. So whether it's Kew Gardens or Douglas, look, Broadway Flushing has a legal defense fund. Douglas Manor has a legal defense fund. Forest Hills Gardens has a legal defense fund. Does Kew Gardens have a legal defense fund?
How much are their legal defense funds?
Anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000. Okay. You guys probably will say, oh, we have to go to court. Everybody please kick in, which is fine. But they actually have money set aside, but that money can go very quickly. That's what I'm trying to get at. Westmoreland, which is on the Little Neck, Great Neck border, they have enough for one lawsuit. If they get challenged by 3 or 4 developers, they're going to be out of business. I'm just saying. So we're going to include deed restricted communities as part of the Article 78 because from 1957 until this year, the city actually was under direction by the courts to facilitate protection of deed restricted communities through zoning that matches the deed restrictions as closely as possible. This turns that upside down and reverses the entire thing. So we're actually going to hit that as one of our pieces for sure in the Article 78. We're going to be focusing heavily on the single family zones and the two family zones, but we're going to be focusing on high density stuff as well. There's so many pieces to this that are just horrendous.
So if
That's
we
why it's
were
so
to use Article 78, would we have any recourse with our covenants? Or would it
Yes.
eliminate the covenant situation?
No. You do have you're one of the few communities that does have recourse. Here's the problem. Your recourse is limited. There was no such thing as floor area ratios. You have nothing. You talk about a 20-foot setback from the street. Okay, that's great. But it doesn't say a 30-foot setback from the rear yard. It doesn't say side yards. It doesn't say how tall the building is going to be. It doesn't say how big the building is going to be in terms of the floor area. So your deed restrictions are limited. Yes, single family. That's good. Yes, 20-foot setback, 40-foot setback for garages or outbuildings. Great. Those are all very good, but that's about as far as they go in terms of controlling the envelope of the building. Right? Let alone the style of the building. That's a whole nother thing, right? Go ahead, Diana. Sorry.
78 proceeding is crucial for us. Yes.
Article 78 is crucial. And as I said, we're also going to be doing civil rights. We're going to challenge the Green Amendment, which is a new statewide law that guarantees clean air and water for all New Yorkers. It is largely untested, so we are going to test it with this case, saying that the city of Yes is the most anti-environmental move that the state has ever done in the history of this state, because it is going to pave over and destroy everything and make things environmentally much, much worse in the city of New York. And the fourth thing is an environmental suit at the federal level, specifically dealing with federal lands. And what I mean by that are the areas in and around Gateway National Recreation Area. So we've got Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island that are all affected by that, combined with the civil rights lawsuit of communities of color living in environmentally challenged communities like in Southeast Queens and Southeast Brooklyn, who are flooding every day, even on a sunny day. So, all of this is going to make that much, much worse. So that's why I said we have all of these different strategies, and we have other strategies too, but they take even more money. So we could do a public referendum. We could literally do a public referendum to overturn the city of Yes. We need 300,000 signatures, and that costs a lot of money. That costs a lot of money. We could do it if we had the money, but we're talking several $1 million to make that happen. So if you know people who want to get crazy, you know when the last time we did a public referendum was? Term limits. 1993. And the person who put up the money was Ron Lauder. He put up all the money himself. Okay. All these charter revision commissions, that's the power that the mayor and the council have. We have that power, but we have to pay for it. And the only way to do it is to get 5% of registered voters' signatures in the city of New York, which is about 250,000 people, but you want to be safe and get between 300 and 400,000 signatures with a ballot. I actually wrote this in my, I'll just show this to you very quickly. I wrote this in my thing. Hold on. Here you go. 1 second. Here. After this, in the Ponset, I have a whole next steps. Here we go. Action plans, lawsuits, citywide referendum, intro A9417. So the lawsuits, these are all the things I just talked about. The Article 78 proceeding, civil rights lawsuit, Green Amendment, environmental lawsuit, citywide referendum. This actually explains to you what you need. 5% of the registered voters in New York City. So you really need about 400,000 signatures to be safe. And these are the two ballot proposals that I wrote up. In 23 and 2024, 3 separate sets of zoning amendments known as the City of Yes for Carbon Neutrality, Economic Opportunity, and Housing Opportunity were made into law despite opposition from a large majority of community boards across New York City. This ballot proposal would change the applicability of these City of Yes amendments to only remain in effect in the community board areas which officially voted yes or conditional yes to all 3 sets of City of Yes amendments. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but only 18 boards voted yes, all the ones in green. 41 boards either voted no or didn't vote or abstained. So really the only boards are Manhattan and Manhattan adjacent boards in Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. And all the other boards voted no. Even even Board 6, which we know is very developer friendly, Forest Hills Rego Park Board, they voted no, which was a shock, but they voted no. So this would change it so that it would only apply to the boards that voted yes.
We
And the
thought
only
that unfavorable with conditions was being treated as a yes.
no, it's yes or no. Unfavorable is a no. Favorable and favorable with conditions is a yes. Unfavorable and unfavorable with conditions is a no. So the only ones that would be where it would take effect are the ones that are in green. The only 2 in Queens that are green are Astoria and Long Island City, to which, us Queens people say that those neighborhoods aren't even Queens anymore.
So
They're
what
their
you're
own.
saying, the lawsuit, if it's one, would only apply to the areas in brown where they voted
No. If we win the lawsuit, it gets killed. The whole thing gets killed across
everything, okay.
Yes, the referendum. This is if we did a referendum.
Oh, okay.
Right. This is about the second ballot measure would be as follows. This ballot proposal would modify the language within Chapter 8, Section 197D of the City Charter to require an affirmative vote of a supermajority or 75% of all the council members on all land use actions that affect more than one community board area, is a designated citywide action or has citywide implications or applications. So obviously the City of Yes was a citywide action. And the whole point is a supermajority is 39 votes. 39. They only got 31 for the City of Yes for housing, and they only got 34 for the economic piece. So they would have been killed immediately had the supermajority been in effect. So those would be the 2 ballot questions. Anyway, I just wanted to show those to you so that you could see them for yourselves. There's other things too, but those are the first pieces. But as I said, that costs money. If you guys know some people with lots of, several $1 million, hook me up.
Is there any commercial group that would be against this? Obviously, the real estate and construction would love this, but
What do you
who
mean?
other than homeowners and
You mean against the
civic
City of
associations?
Yes?
Yeah.
Well, the vast majority of people in the city are against the City of Yes.
Other than that, I'm talking about groups that you could hit up for funding.
Oh, I see what you mean. You'd think so, but all the environmental groups, they signed on because they're all being run by 25-year-olds from Iowa who have no understanding of what they're doing. That have, just mindlessly continue, repeat the mantra. And my response is, how can you say something that's going to pave over the entire city is environmentally positive? I don't understand how you can say this. This is crazy talk. But that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people who are ideological. They're not, they're saying things like, I moved here and I want to pay a reasonable amount to live on Broadway and 57th Street in Manhattan. I want to pay $1,200 a month. And, and they moved here and their job before this was that they worked at Google as a senior engineer for $200,000 a year. Like just no basis in reality. And again, the focus is on there's something wrong with home ownership, right? There's something wrong with single family homes. This is wrong. The American dream is a lie. Everybody should rent for their entire lives. No one should own anything. I mean, it's, as I said, I've been doing this now for 4 years straight without a break. With the state and with the speaker before that, the speaker Johnson before that, and just listening to the insanity of some of what people are saying, it makes zero sense. And yet people are voting for it. So
Do you
that
have any more good news for us?
Any more good news? Yes. So one of the other things that everybody needs to keep a serious eye out for is something called Intro 1107. Intro 1107, and again, I can share this with you because it's in the Neponset thing, so you can read it yourself. Intro 1107 is a bill that was introduced while the City of Yes was going on.
Oh, the Airbnb.
The Airbnb bill. So what this will do is actually we just essentially outlawed Airbnb in 2021, right? In 2021, they passed a law, or 2022, called Local Law 18. And what Local Law 18 did was it stopped short-term Airbnb rentals. It still allowed long-term ones, but short-term ones were outlawed, and everybody doing Airbnb had to register with the city, and they were for long-term rentals where the owner had to be there. So it was a home share, okay? I'm not thrilled with home share, but it makes some sense, I suppose. This bill will completely destroy that. It will allow short-term Airbnb use of all 1- and 2-family homes. It is only targeted at 1- and 2-family homes. All short-term Airbnb use of all 1- and 2-family homes in New York. Change the definition of adult in the building code to mean 18 years and older. Change the definition of family to increase the number of lodgers from 2 to 4 adults. Allow a permanent occupant to allow up to 4 separate guests and their children. And the registered host of the property need not be physically present during the term of the rental, which means this is going to set up hedge funds and speculators to start buying up 1- and 2-family homes all over the city to turn them into permanent short stay hotels. This is happening all over the country. It's happening in California. It's happening in North Carolina. It's happening in Georgia. It's happening in Maryland. Literally happening everywhere, where entire blocks of homes in suburban neighborhoods are being bought up by hedge funds and turned into short-term or long-term rentals.
So what's the speaker's reasoning for supporting this when she just rammed through City of Yes?
Ah,
Tries to do the opposite.
you are asking the right question. So the speaker apparently killed this bill 2 years in a row. What changed? I'll tell you what changed. The speaker is term limited and she's looking for a job. That's the first thing I'm going to say. The second thing I'm going to say is there's a new head at Airbnb. Did you know that? The new chief legal officer is a gentleman by the name of Ron Klain. Does that name ring a bell with anybody? Does anybody know who Ron Klain is? He was Joe Biden's chief of staff. Joe Biden's chief of staff left December 31st, 2023, and on January 1st became one of the top 3 executives at Airbnb, the chief legal officer, and started making phone calls to top Democrats around the country to get them to open up their doors for Airbnb. That is exactly, and again, I'm not a conspiracy theory person. This is exactly what happened. So now, interestingly, we have something in common with the Hotel Trades Council, because the Hotel Trades Council is about to go on the warpath over this because they see this as being the death of the hotel industry in the city. And they've got 200,000 members who are going to lose jobs.
So
we have something very much aligned with this group that we normally have nothing aligned with, but hopefully we're going to be working very closely with them, the civic communities and the hotel trades and their allies, to kill this terrible, terrible bill.
We
Strange-
worked with,
Strange
we worked with
bedfellows, right?
I'm sorry?
Strange bedfellows.
Range bedfellows. Yes. Sorry, Adam. Go ahead.
we worked with the hotels union on the hotel bill that was defeated or was rewritten last year, ostensibly giving the city or the state the requiring the hotels to be licensed by the city. And actually, Pam Reinertson, who's on here, testified on behalf of the Civic Association in support of that bill.
Yeah, that's local law 18.
Yeah,
That's the law. That's the one I'm talking about, that forced Airbnb to register every single person who was going to be doing it, and that they couldn't
no,
for days.
no, this was the one that was last year in the fall.
Oh, in 2024.
I believe so, yeah.
All right.
And so Pam, on behalf of the Civic Association, testified, in support of that against all of the hotel owners and everything. So we know the hotel union folks and have spoken with them, and their political guy is quite sharp.
You've talked to Bav.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking with him as well. And Austin Shaffron, who's their lobbyist.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, that's going to be the absolute death stroke, because now you so now in Kew Gardens, someone buys up a 60 by 100, tears it down, builds 2 units and 2 houses, and then starts renting them out as short-term Airbnbs.
we already have crash pads, but for the most part, they're pretty quiet.
Well, this wouldn't be quiet.
Yeah.
This would be much more, this would be essentially state sanctioned.
Paul, I have to say, everything that you've told us today is exhausting.
It is. And just imagine
I
doing this
feel
for 4
totally
years.
exhausted.
You should be exhausted, and you should be scared. Very, very scared. And I'm not someone who likes to scare people, but I like to inform people about what's going on so that they can decide what they're going to do. So I really hope, A, that you guys donate to the lawsuit, B, that you help out, and C, and again, I've spoken to Dom about this before, I think you guys really need to organize and figure out every property in your catchment area to find out which properties have deed restrictions, which ones don't, and have them all on file so that as properties get sold or permits get pulled, you guys can take action as you need to see fit.
So to get the deeds, does it have to be a certified deed? Or
No.
just have them on file so that we know what we're looking at?
No, you need to go to the Department of Finance.
Proved on, and it takes
Right.
a while. I
Takes
mean,
a while. You got to get to the microfilm, and you got to go and right. So I had offered to do that. Dom and I talked about this a year ago, and I said, if you want me to do it, I'll do it, but I'll have to charge you for it and whatever. So if you guys want to do it yourselves, that's great. And in fact, that's exactly what I said to Dom. If you guys can do it yourselves, fantastic. If not, and you want to hire me, I'll do it. But I'm going to have to charge you for that because I'm going to be looking up 500 deeds. It's not.
oh yeah, and it's
What are the
exhausting.
chances that if one house has a deed, that the house next to it would also have deed restrictions?
You know what? The chances are good, but you have to have all of them on file. That's how we were able to do the Kew Forest case, because there were 65 separate deeds, and each one of them had to be pulled to show that each one of them had them. So I agree with you that using logic, right, and knowing the plot plan, that chances are the deed is there, but you got to find it and you have to have it on file. You got to make sure that you have it in hand.
So if
It's the
we
only way it
reached out
works.
to our members and asked them to look in their file cabinet for their,
you'll
Right.
get some. I did not have it.
You'll get some.
I
Yeah,
did
I
not.
mean-
I had to go to the registrar to find it because my deed, when I bought this house, did not have any of these restrictions noted.
what about your
Correct.
title search?
Title search didn't come up with it either.
No, I'm telling you, after two houses, after 2 generations of house sales, those deed restrictions are stripped. They are removed. And the title searches are only required to go back 2 owners.
Oh,
So So this is the problem. And
Bible.
so that's why you have to go back to the original transaction between the Mann family and the first developer or person who bought the property from them. I'm going to write just, again, in the chat, I wrote Queen Civic Congress. That's who you make the check out to. The memo put City of Yes Legal Defense Fund. Okay, that's in there. And then if you want to mail it to me.
Okay.
Okay, and my address is 146-24, 32nd. I'm writing it in the chat box. 32nd Avenue, Flushing, New York, 11354. There we go. Okay, so that's all in the
What
chat.
would it cost for you to do the search for deed restriction?
What did I quote you, Dom? I have to look it up again.
Oh, geez, it's a while ago.
Hold on, I'm gonna pull it up. Give me a second.
Yeah, I
that-
don't want to step on it, Paul. You got it.
Well, someone was asking me something. Sorry.
Paul, you sound pretty busy to start looking up deed restrictions.
Well, I'll tell you this much. Once the lawsuits are filed, which will be in the next month to 6 weeks, I'll be a lot less crazed.
Okay.
Because once things are moving, then there's less for me to do on a day-to-day basis in terms of that. So yes. Hold on a second.
I have a deed. So
Yeah.
Paul, until this is overturned, the city of Yes and all of these abilities of builders and developers doing things are in effect. Is that right?
They are in effect, and they're in effect. If we go to court and we get a preliminary injunction, they will be held at bay,
Okay.
right? So they'll be suspended,
Mhm.
and they won't be able to give out additional permits or do anything, which is why we want to try to get it done as quickly as possible. But-
Excuse me, Paul, what is your timeline looking like for filing for that injunction?
Well, we were aiming for the end of January, but I think it's going to be later than that because we just got the retainer signed on Tuesday and the check written today. So we have until April 16th. I think the plan is to do it as soon as possible. So for me, that's going to be in February. Here's the thing about an Article 78. Article 78s are different from other lawsuits because they're very technical and they're very narrow. You have to front load the Article 78, meaning everything you're going to sue about, everything you're bringing into the lawsuit, you have to bring up front. It's not like a murder case where someone says, by the way, we just found a knife lying on the floor, halfway through they're like, sorry. So you introduce everything at the beginning. You have 20 days once you start the action to amend it. So you can add to it for the first 20 days, and then you can't add another sentence. So we have to make sure when we file it that we have everything, buttoned down as much as we're going to do. Does that make sense?
Yes, and until that time, this has already gone into effect. So if, for example, I wanted to file for, like partition of my lot or any of that, that can already start to happen?
In theory, although they haven't changed the, they haven't changed the online stuff yet. So I don't think, and it's also very cold out. So I mean, I always say winter is our friend. So hopefully, okay, I found it. Hopefully people will be able to, if we can shut it down, then they won't be able to give out any more permits, right? And again, as Jack said, if we win the case, it doesn't matter if the permits have been released or not. The permits are illegal and they violate everything, so they're immediately killed, and anything that's happened prior is not grandfathered in. So The deterrent to the city is if we get the preliminary injunction, if we get a judge to sign off and give us the order to show cause to get a preliminary injunction, that the recommendation to the city is you better not give out any permits, because if you give out the permits, you're going to get sued. Not by
Okay.
us, but by the actual people that you're giving the permits to.
How
So
long does
let's
the
say
injunction
hypothetically,
last?
Sorry?
How long does an injunction usually last?
Until the judge lifts it.
Well, typically,
I've seen injunctions last 5 years. I've seen injunctions last a long time. Then there's a temporary restraining order, TROs. That's also connected to that too. So it all depends on what process happens. We have to see. Hey,
Maddie,
Grazino.
you had a question?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, hold on. Maddie had a question.
so I just wanted to know, and this question is for our board as well, but it's I guess primarily for you, Paul. Let's say that you went through and found all of our deeds,
Yep.
and more or less 99% of the properties that fall into our concern have deed restrictions that don't allow this to sort of really happen. Would it make sense for us as an association, as a preemptive sort of gesture, to send out physical mailings the way we do our newsletter into every
Absolutely.
post box to say, hey, just letting you know, City of Yes
Absolutely.
You
asked,
bet.
but you can't do it. You can't participate.
Well,
That's
kind of-
right.
It's putting everybody on notice. And in fact,
Mhm.
what other associations do is every time a house goes up for sale and someone buys a new house, those people immediately get a certified letter from them saying, hello, welcome to the neighborhood. By the way, you're in the Rickard Finley Covenant area, and et cetera, et cetera. So by the way, I found the document. So it was, what I had done was, okay, so what I had initially done was, because this was the original idea, was to research 2 parcels per block, up to 66 parcels. And I don't think that that's going to do it. I think you need to get every single one of them. That's what I was saying to Dom a year ago too.
Yeah.
I said that to
Yeah.
him. So at the time I was saying because you have 33 blocks, so 2 parcels per block, 66 parcels, additional parcels may be added as per the wishes of the association. And I said, and I was willing to do it for a rock bottom price, which for me, just to let you know, my regular market rate is $350 to $425 an hour, right? My nonprofit rate is $175 an hour. I was going to do it for you for $75 an hour, which is like very, very, very reasonable. I mean, the QCC stuff that I'm doing is $75 an hour, and I've been working 80 to 100 hours a week and charging them for 20 hours a week, or less, 10 hours a week. So what I had said was it was a $3,000 initial retainer fee, equivalent to 40 hours. And after the first 40 hours have been completed and accounted for, invoices will be submitted for billing on a monthly basis, or after at least 20 hours have accrued, an initial cap of $10,000 will be put in place should both parties agree to lift the cap. Again, that was only looking at 66 properties. Now, here's a great thing to do. If we can get people who have their deed restrictions, I don't have to look them up. Right? So Adam, you have yours, and Diana, you have yours. If we have people, if you've got, 500 properties to deal with here, and 100 of them already have their deed restrictions, that's 100 I don't need to look up, or that you don't need to look up. So that's the way that I would approach it. I don't think it was unreasonable at all. Dom, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think your response was that you couldn't get agreement at the board. So it's fair. I mean, you asked me for a proposal, I gave it to you. So that's what I would do. Again, it's up to you guys if you want me to do it, and I'm happy to do it. And I think it's worth it. I think it's really worth it for you to have a comprehensive list of every single deeded property, right? The ones that are clearly deeded, so that you have it and you have a final record that you, at any time someone violates these, and you also have no fences or walls in the front, correct? Right. So you have that, you have your one family, you have your 20-foot setback, your 40-foot setback. So as long as you have those
We
restrictions,
have plenty of properties with fences in the front at this point.
right? But you have the ability at any time, and this is what we've done. For example, in Broadway Flushing, we won a huge case in 2014. It went on for 7.5 years. 7.5 years. A guy built a fence. He built a wall, not just a fence, a wall within 20 feet of the front yard.
Why?
Because
Hey, why didn't that work for that property on 81st, on 80th Avenue with on Grenfell? The beautiful corner fence that she wanted the city to give a variance because it was in the sidewalk.
We fought that on zoning, Adam. We didn't
it's a
fight,
zoning issue. Yeah.
we didn't fight it on the deed restriction,
But we
if I
could have.
remember right.
And you can fight it on the deed restriction if you wish. But here's the thing about deed restrictions, and this is kind of what I was saying before. If you allow your community to start having fences and walls, there comes a point where if you have too many fences and walls, that portion of your deed restriction can then be extinguished.
We got a
Right?
lot of them.
So if I went through your community and looked at all 500 properties, you might have 30 fences. That's okay. If you have 150 fences, now you've got a different story, because the judge, it's all based on what the judge says. Q Forest, let me give you the example. In Q Forest, there are 65 properties. The developer tore down the corner house with the plans to build a 7-story apartment building. Of the 65 properties, 63 of them were still detached, and 58 of them were still single-family homes. The other 5 of them were 2-family homes. One of them had been converted into a multifamily, and one of them was the teardown. Okay, so it's based on the numbers. In Broadway Flushing, they have 550 properties. They have a few fences that were put up in the 60s when there was no association, and they chose not to go after those fences because they predate the association. It doesn't mean they don't have the ability to go after them, they just didn't. They won this big case in 2014, and in 2020, some new people moved in and started putting up fences all over their front yards. So they went to court, and these new owners claimed racism. And it was outrageous. It's not racism. Everybody here is burdened and benefited by the same deed restriction. It doesn't matter what background you are. If
Does
the
it
deed
make
restriction,
Does it make a difference how long the fence has been up?
no, it makes no difference. You could have a fence up for 40 years and you could go to them and say, I think you need to take your fence down. You're violating the covenant. They could make a case. It's been there and you haven't said anything, but this deed restrictions are different from adverse possession. It doesn't follow the same route. But my
Okay.
point is, they went to court. We went to court. Mark and I challenged all 3 of them and said, what are you doing? You know, and they all backed down and they all took their fences down. And it's that simple. They said, we said, we don't want to sue you. We're not looking for damages. We're telling you, take your damn fences down. You're violating the covenant. You have the ability to do that if you so choose, until you get to a point where the changes have been made so dramatically across the community that becomes something that you can't challenge anymore. And that's why I said it would be, I mean, I've driven through your community. You have a few fences when you look at the whole picture, right? You have to look at all the properties and put them all together before you make
And
that.
it doesn't make a difference if this fence is set back from the property line.
20 feet,
Front. It has to be 20 feet from the sidewalk.
20 feet from the property line. Your sidewalk is not the property line.
Yeah, we have a lot of fences in backyards.
That's fine.
Oh,
But what is the property line then?
The property line is based upon what so for example, my house, I'm on 50 by 150. My street is technically 60 feet wide, but the paved portion of it is only 30 feet wide. And the sidewalk, I have an apron, as they call it. My apron is 8 feet. Then I have a sidewalk. And then what looks to be part of my front yard is actually part of the street bed. So my
We have-
property,
Here.
Sorry?
We
Same
have
here.
that, we have
Correct.
that in
You're-
our ordinance as well.
Or so the 20 feet is not from the sidewalk. The 20 feet is from your property line, which may be more like 30 feet or 25 feet, depending on the property. Again, that's all stuff that should be mapped out. I'm just saying, this is, I know it's a pain in the neck, but as I've said to you, you guys are the lucky ones. You know, you guys are the ones that have these controls if you choose to exercise them. If you don't exercise them, you lose them.
Paul, I don't want to take you off topic or to take like too much of anyone's time,
Sure.
but we have this issue, and I'm just curious. So we have a house that has built a wall too high that we went up against in regards to like how it violates zoning. But that wall is also built on that city property that is part of the person's front yard, or adjacent to the front yard, and looks like it is their front yard because it is part of their green lawn.
I understand.
And they've built 4 feet into city Department of Transit city property, and they've received a variance from the DOT that it's okay. And
So it's not on their property. It's on the city property.
they've taken 4 feet across the front and side. It's a corner lot of
What-
city property. Yes.
What's the address?
Oh gosh. Give me.
I'm gonna stop the recording at this point.
Okay.
Oh, Paul, before you do that, send me that proposal again. I'd like everybody to look at it. We should discuss it as the board again. Your fee proposal for doing the research, would you please?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Paul.
To do it. I'll send it
Oh.
again and just understand that was based on looking up, again, 2 properties per block, but I really
Yeah.
think you should be looking for all of them.
Okay.
Minus the ones you already have. Obviously,
Yeah.
the ones you have.
Before I stop.
Yeah.
Before I stop the recording, I want to thank you for
Yes.
lightening us. I don't feel much better. I know we're in a good position compared to other communities, but thank you again. So I'm going to stop the
Yeah,
recording.
this is
Can I just
amazing.
ask a question first before you stop the recording? Paul, you mentioned about getting that man map. You mentioned you had a prior lawsuit, maybe 30 years or 25 years ago.
Yep.
And that you filed a copy of that man map.
And that's in the court case. I mean, if you can
In
pull
the court, so the court file should
it should have a
still
copy
exist.
of it. Correct. If you can get that court file, then you're good. It's
Well, what
it's
court was it?
Q Forest Neighborhood Association versus Rita Lieberman and Judge Schmidt.
Could you spell the Rita Lieberman?
Lieberman, Lieber. Hold on. Q Forest Civic Association. The Rita.
Oh, Civic Association, not neighborhood.
Or Neighborhood Association. Hold on. Let me just double check. Rita Lieberman.
Noreen, can you research this for us?
Let me just get the information. I don't think
Here
it's
it
going to be
is.
online.
Q Forest Neighborhood Association Inc. v. Lieberman.
Leiberman.
Man, yep.
Leib as in Bernard, Erman. And what's the first name on the Lieberman?
Rita.
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 And it's Q Forest Neighborhood Association.
Q Forest Neighborhood Association Inc. Supreme Court of the State of New York Appellate Division, Second Judicial Department, 4820F. That was the appellate court, but Judge Schmidt was the one who decided it.
Well, wait a minute. Could you, that appellate division citation again?
Yes, it was Appellate Division, Second Judicial Department, 4820F.
That's the, yeah. Do you happen to have the citation? If there wasn't a decision, or
Oh, there
this is
was
at the appellate division?
Schmidt was the one who made the decision.
Oh, okay. So Schmidt, being one on the appellate division panel?
I don't
Not the-
I don't know if he was Supreme Court, if he was the Supreme Court, and then it went to the appellate. It went all the way to the Court of Appeals. I know that.
If Schmidt was alone, that's the lowest level, Paul.
Yeah, I
That's
think it was Supreme Court. Here we go. Judge Nix Forest Hills apartment building. Fred Schmidt, State Supreme Court Justice Fred Schmidt. Said in
And what county?
Queens.
Okay,
Yeah, no, he used to be the assembly member for Richmond Hill and Kew Gardens and Forest Hills, and then he became a judge.
okay.
He was very familiar with the whole thing. And oh, here I'm actually quoted here. That's right. I forgot. Yes, so Judge Schmidt said that there are restrictive covenants on the property at 77-16 Kew Forest Lane and on 65 other lots in the neighborhood that only allow the presence of one-family homes. No large buildings, multifamily homes, or businesses are permitted in the area between Queens Boulevard, Union Turnpike, Austin Street, 76 Drive, the judge said in his ruling. Harold Stangler, the attorney representing the owners, he was a real jerk. I remember him. Said they would appeal it, and that the covenants were written decades ago, and that they're old, they're old and moldy, and they shouldn't be paid attention to. Paul Graziano, a civic activist who advised the Kew Forest Neighborhood Association in the suit, said records of restrictive covenants can be found in the Department of Taxation and Finance. So clearly,
And what year was that?
1998 is when we filed. 98 or 99, and they decided it in 2002.
Who's they again that decided it?
Fred Smith.
Schmidt, okay.
Yeah.
See, what I don't understand, the decision by Schmidt was 2002, you said?
Okay, here it is. It says, May of 2001, Judge Schmidt set a preliminary injunction against the development. 2 months later, the appellate division upheld the lower court's decision. That was in May of 2001. Then it says, yes, so his final rule, so in other words, he filed a preliminary injunction. They went to the appellate court to have the preliminary injunction overturned.
I see.
Okay. They were unsuccessful. His decision was on July 31st, 2002 at the Supreme Court, which decided in the favor of the Kew Forest Association. Then it went to the appellate division and to the Court of Appeals. And they upheld his decision.
Oh,
So, yeah.
So other than so it went up twice to the appellate division, first on the injunction and then on the entire appeal of the whole thing.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, okay, good, because then there might be then a record on appeal lurking out there. And you said that one of the exhibits that you submitted was this map.
Well, we submitted the map along with every deed. They actually put together a book. This is what you guys should have, a book with every single deed restriction color coded with the map. It was quite something. And this is before the internet.
On all this, do you know?
I'm sorry, say again?
How much did they spend on all this, do you know?
I mean, in 1998, so they created the association out of thin air. They had 65 houses, and they got 27 members. And I believe they spent $160,000. Now, this was an epic case because it was, again, a 7-story apartment building being built in the middle of one-family homes. And had that been successful, that neighborhood would have been dust in 10 years.
This is the neighborhood right behind Kew Forest School, right?
Correct. So the Kew Forest School had a different deed restriction than all of the houses did. And that's why they're building those apartment buildings there now. They never changed the zone. The rest of the area was rezoned to R2. The single family homes were rezoned to R2 to match the deed restrictions. Okay, thank you, Chris. I see Chris just wrote a little thing here. So anyway, my point is, if you can pull that, you should be able to find the overall Kew Gardens scheme, the map, if you're able to pull the case. That would be good. Again, I'll try to find it myself, but that would be fantastic if you could get that.
I'm gonna stop recording now.
Yeah, I think we can stop recording now. Paul, thank